I am going to introduce our first speaker this evening, Mrs. Kari Sulzer, the counselor of the class of 2020.
Good evening, everybody. It's a good turnout. Thanks for coming. As she said, I'm Kari Sulzer. I'm the counselor for the current junior class. I have said this before, but in case you haven't heard it, I will be rolling up with the junior class, so I'll be working with the seniors next year, helping you guys through the senior year and working with you to figure out what's going to happen after your students graduate. I won't be doing that alone, though. Miss Janet Wolf and Shannon Vinsel will be helping me. They're both part-time counselors, but one of them will always be in the office there with me. My daughter likes to refer to them as Shannon. So, Janet and Shannon. Yeah, so if I'm not available at any point, they are always in the office as well. And they have been working with the senior class this year, so they are all over it. They know exactly what needs to be done, so they are more than qualified to help as well. How many people are parents of seniors and this is your first senior? A couple. Will be seniors, yeah. But most of you have been through this process before? Maybe? Raise your hand if you've been through this process before. More than, okay, great. Okay, so when we do the question and answer later, feel free to join in and give us some tips as well, okay? So I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I just want to hit a few things. There is some information out front. This was one of them, if you didn't pick it up. Or if there wasn't any left, this is going to be on the website, so you can take a look at it later. Everybody wants to know how to go about the college search, obviously, and how to find the best fit for your student, or the students want to know how to find their best fit. The first thing I want to say, and I hope you take away from this, is there's not just one college for your child. There are over 4,000 institutions, secondary institutions in the United States. There's more than one that your child will be happy at, okay? I promise you. So when you go home tonight, and kids, when you go home tonight, please just remember that this process is supposed to be fun. It's exciting, it's an adventure, it's enlightening, okay? It's not supposed to stress you out to the max. I know that it's stressful, okay? Don't get me wrong. Been doing this for a while, but I promise you, I want you to try to remember that this is supposed to be fun, okay? I read an article not long ago, and I've put it on this handout. Another thing that I want you to try to remember when you're going through this process is this quote: "The substance of the experience and how a particular institution fits your needs should be your top priority. The college selection process does not have to be stressful if students and parents focus on what's really important. Know yourself and know the college that you're applying to." And there's some tips in here about things you should consider when you're applying, such as, obviously, the academics that the college offers, okay? If you already know your major, great, make sure the college you're applying to has that major. A lot of students don't have any idea what they want to major in, and that's okay. You might want to consider a college that has a lot of different options then. Obviously, affordability is another thing you want to consider. The community that the college is located in, location of the college, like, am I going to have to get on a plane to come home for Christmas, or can I drive home for Christmas? If there's an emergency, can my family get to me? All kinds of things like that that sometimes people don't think about. The selectivity of the college. Do you meet the criteria? I know this is a very competitive school, okay? But your majority of the colleges that you apply to, you need to meet their criteria. That's one way that you stay not stressed, okay? Consider the support that the college offers. Academic support, career support. Some students are on certain plans here at school, IEPs and 504s. Colleges will continue to utilize those for your students. Some colleges do more than others do, so you want to ask those questions when you talk to admissions offices. and enrichment of the college. What extracurricular activities do they have? Do they have a Greek system? Are you interested in that? So think about those things as well. I have a timeline here. I'm not going to read this to you. I know you can read through this. And there's lots of great websites out there that go through different timelines to consider, especially after your junior year and starting your senior year. But there's other timelines out there for freshmen and sophomores, things you can start thinking about if I have any underclassmen here as well. There are a lot of great college searches on the website too. College Board has a great college search. You can plug in the size of college you were interested in, the location in the United States, a major, if you're interested in athletics, if you're interested in the Greek system. It gets pretty specific, so that's a good place to start. But what I really want you to take home is that you need to understand the college's personality, and does that fit for you? Are you someone who needs to be in the city and have lots of things going on around you? So when you're not doing the college life, you need things like that to make you happy, because you need to be happy where you're living for at least 4 years, right? Or do you like to be surrounded by wilderness, so you need to be in a location where you can do activities like that? So those are the things you need to think about as well. I am going to hand it over now to Ms. Vinsel, who's going to talk a little bit about scholarships.
Hi, everybody. Okay, we have students and parents contact guidance all the time about how to get scholarships to help pay for college, because students might get some merit scholarships or maybe no scholarships at all, and as all of you know, tuition goes up every year. And the past, I think, 10 years, it's actually at least doubled in most colleges. So it's really, really hard to pay for college if you haven't been planning for a really long time. That's kind of a loaded question. How do you find scholarships? A lot of it is however much work and effort your student puts into the scholarship search is probably what they're going to get out. It's an exhausting task to search through Google and just find scholarship after scholarship, page after page, thousands of scholarships out there. So the truth is, however much work you and your student put into it is probably how much money you're going to get out of that process. If you didn't pick up a yellow sheet and you want one, we've got extras that are out on the tables. I also have a couple up here. For students that come to me and ask questions, or parents even, my first step is that I give them this senior checklist. And really, I think this is very beneficial for juniors too. One of the first steps would be to visit the financial aid website for the schools that you're interested in applying. A lot of times, giving a phone call or even a visit, if that's plausible, to the financial aid office. They have kind of like counselors in their financial aid offices that can sit down and meet with you and go over what's expected from your family and different ways to pay for it. So that's the first step. Apply to your top colleges before winter break. Many, many, many deadlines fall before winter break. So that's why we say it's really important to go ahead and hit the ground running at the beginning of senior year and go ahead and start applying. Because a lot of those scholarship deadlines are in the fall, application deadlines are in the fall. So that's something that you and your student really need to plot out when you look at your different college choices. Review specific requirements for freshman scholarships. Every year we have kids who are devastated because maybe the deadline was January 1st for the college, but the scholarship deadline was November 1st. So they may have applied by January 1st, but any scholarships that they would be qualified for with ACT scores and GPA and everything that they have on their resume, they don't get that money because they didn't hit that November 1 deadline. It is not your counselor's responsibility to know every single deadline for every single school where you're applying. It is you and your student's responsibility. So please, please, make a spreadsheet if you need to with the college deadlines for scholarships as well as whatever deadline is for the application. And some schools have rolling deadlines where you can apply even up to the summer before you start college and they'll accept you. But scholarship deadlines tend to be hard deadlines. Even if you finish and you hit submit the day after, you've lost that money for the most part. So that's really, really important. Review colleges' available general scholarships. In addition to merit scholarships, which tend to be based on academics, they also have a scholarship page. Most colleges have a scholarship page that have all the scholarships that are asked to be posted on their website that you can look through and see what your student might qualify for. Pursue external scholarships. That's scholarships that are maybe through the Coca-Cola company or maybe a local bank, things like that. And there are thousands out there, but I'll go over ways to search for those too. And then the last thing on the checklist is to fill out the FAFSA. FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Yes, that is government money, but I still recommend that everyone here fills out the FAFSA. And the reason is, even if you think that your family might have too much income to qualify for free money from the government, which would be called grants, it's still necessary. You have to do it if you want to get Hope Scholarship, which will be if you stay in the state of Tennessee. It's also helpful even if you go out of state because a lot of colleges want to see your FAFSA to know how much they expect you to pay. So if you have any questions about FAFSA, contact your college financial aid office and get their input on it. But we do recommend that everyone fills out FAFSA, no matter how high or low your income might be. Okay. So we have a scholarship website in Williamson County where all of the guidance counselors across the district will take any scholarships that are brought to our attention and we put them on one list. That's underneath our scholarship tab on our WCS Brentwood High School webpage, okay, under school counseling. Unfortunately, only students can look at that list when they're logged into their MyPlace account. So if parents want to look at that list, and it's a very lengthy list, but it's organized, it's a timeline that's split by deadlines for each scholarship by month, and it's actually really easy to navigate. We include the website, so you can just click on it if you're interested in them, but the student does have to be logged into their MyPlace account. So if your student agrees to give you their login information, feel free to go to that, log in under their Williamson County MyPlace account and look at that scholarship list. Otherwise, the student has to do it. Now, keep in mind, that's not every scholarship in America or the world, okay? That's only scholarships that are brought to our attention as Williamson County counselors, okay? But this was the first year we did it, and it's very helpful because different schools get different scholarships emailed to us and mailed to us and things like that. So that's a great place to look for scholarships. There are a select few scholarships that are only for Brentwood High School students. We list those directly on our website. Since it's not for any other kids or not every single school in Williamson County, we list those separately. And we also put those on the announcements. One of them is called the Noon Rotary Scholarship. And we have a contact from the Noon Rotary who's here today to talk a little bit about that scholarship. She also had 2 Brentwood High School graduates, and she is going to share her way of doing this dreaded scholarship search because her daughter has actually got a lot of money from outside scholarships, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about how she helped them do that as a parent. Any other scholarship questions, please feel free to email one of your counselors and we'll get the answer for you.
Hi, I'm Sheila Cleveland. And first of all, I have a Rotary hat that I like wearing. I'm on the board of the Brentwood Noon Rotary. And we have a $10,000 scholarship. And about 3 years ago, we didn't have anybody from Brentwood that applied for it. And this scholarship is just for Brentwood. We have one just for Ravenwood, and we have one just for Overton. So you're only competing within the Brentwood students. It's a $10,000 scholarship, and we dole it out for about $2,500 each year. And so it's a fantastic scholarship, and it's a shame that, this year we got 8 applicants, but it's just a shame if you don't apply for it. And then I know the Brentwood Morning Rotary has one, but I believe that's, I might have brought up to $2,500 this year. So that's a great scholarship. And just one of the things I did with my girls is they were so heavy in sports, academics, and you all know that junior year is just a real tough year. And so the way I did it, I basically was the one who fed them the scholarships. I would go on every website I can find, and once they qualified, and I started listing them, and I started feeding it to them. So every weekend, they would have to complete 1 or 2 scholarship applications. And then a lot of times they would do an essay and just a really good essay that they can knock out that can go apply to different scholarships. And that's the way I help them. And my oldest one got about $19,000 of outside scholarships just by doing that. And it's a lot of work for a parent. It's not like you don't have enough to do, but it sure did help them, because the hardest thing for them to do is go through the websites and try to figure it out. But if you tell them you qualify for this, apply for this, then it makes it a lot easier for them. So, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cleveland. Next, we have from Cumberland University, speaking to Tennessee Scholarship Programs, Lauren Gregory. What's your comfort level?
I'll stand up here and talk. Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Gregory. I am from, I'll move to this side. I am from Cumberland University. I am an enrollment specialist there. So if you all have any questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out and chat with me if you have any questions about anything. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about some of the opportunities that Tennessee has to offer for specific scholarships. Really, the one I want to speak with you about tonight is actually going to be the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. If you're familiar with Tennessee Promise, raise your hand. All right, hands down. If you feel like you know a very detailed explanation of what Tennessee Promise is and what it does and how it works, raise your hand. A lot less, yeah. So, I can give you a few little facts about Tennessee Promise. Tennessee Promise is a large scholarship that is given to any Tennessee in-state graduating student. So if you graduate from a Tennessee high school, you are eligible for this scholarship as long as you meet the requirements for it. Usually the requirements include going to mandatory meetings. It also includes 8 hours of community service. Those 8 hours of community service are due by July 1st. When are they due by? Excellent. That is how you keep your Tennessee Promise eligibility. However, if you were to not complete your service hours, or if you were to miss a meeting, or accidentally miss a deadline, unfortunately, you would lose your Tennessee Promise funding, and you cannot get it back once it's gone. So it's super important. Get with your counselor. There's also mentors through the program to where you're eligible to stay on target and make sure that you reach that to completion. Tennessee Promise is eligible at 13 community colleges and also at a handful of four-year universities. Cumberland University being one of the only private universities that is eligible for Tennessee Promise. So the way that works at Cumberland is we have a discounted tuition rate, and then any type of other grants or scholarships are put in. Since Tennessee Promise is a last dollar scholarship, last dollar scholarship means that the Pell Grant would go in, the Hope Lottery money would go in, and then to top it all off would be your Tennessee Promise funding. So at Cumberland, that would equal zero tuition, tuition equaling classes. So that means that for your 2 years, or however long it takes you to do an associate's degree, your tuition would be paid for. It's the exact same deal that any of the community colleges offer. Tennessee Promise, we have been in coordination with them since the very beginning, whenever they launched the program. And Cumberland University is a proud partner with them. So if you are interested in pursuing the Tennessee Promise program with Cumberland, please feel free to talk to me afterwards. Also in some of the booklets, there's information out on the table. There's a booklet about the university. It also has a list of our associates, our bachelor's, and our master's programs. It tells you some fun facts about the university, and it also, there's a flyer with it that tells you how Cumberland does Tennessee Promise, and a handy business card as well. So a little bit about Cumberland University before I'm done. Cumberland University is a private four-year liberal arts university located in Lebanon, Tennessee, so not too far from here. We were founded in 1842, so we've been around for a while. And really, the advantage to going to a smaller liberal arts university is the fact that you would be able to have a wider variety in your education. Liberal arts really means that you're eligible to take courses that are not necessarily within your major, but are still required for your degree. So for example, my degree was in music education, but I took classes in histories, humanities, mathematics, science, anthropology, and of course in arts credit as well. So you take a wide variety in your courses. The advantage to going to a liberal arts university is that it makes you more, what's the word I'm searching for? More awesome. I like the more awesome. It makes you more unique. Well-rounded, I love that. It makes you more well-rounded and more prepared for moving into the workforce. They're looking for people who are dynamic, flexible, able to do more than one task. And by going to a liberal arts university, it actually provides you the exposure and the experience to prepare you for that. So that's kind of my spiel. If y'all have any questions, please feel free to reach out and let me know. Thank you.
And after our next speaker, we'll have a Q&A with our college reps to speak to applications and admittance. Stacy Hall from the University of Alabama.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me tonight. I'm so excited to be here. I spend quite a bit of time in Williamson County. My name is Stacy Hall, again, and I am a regional recruiter with the University of Alabama, and we are located in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. However, I live here. So I work full-time with Middle Tennessee students to help them with the application process, scholarship questions, campus tours, basically anything that you would call an admissions office for. That is what I'm here to do. So hopefully you guys will reach out to me if you have any questions. But we'll talk a little bit about the application process and then also just admissions and enrollment, how everything works. So you've probably heard from some schools that you've maybe talked to in the past, or if some of you guys have already gone through this experience with another student. The application process is going to happen soon for you guys if y'all are juniors. Generally, many schools, their application will open in July or in the summer before your senior year begins. Also, the Common App that you've maybe heard of, that's going to open for you soon too. So that's something to prepare for. But generally with the application process, what colleges are looking for is for you to complete that online application or that Common App, just depending on what the school looks for. You'll submit transcripts. Those come from your high school. You must request that. Generally, a transcript is not just going to automatically be sent to all of the schools that you apply to. So you want to make sure that you request that your transcript be sent in and that you send in your test scores. So ACT, your SAT, just whatever test you choose to take. Most schools will take both, but you'll submit that as well. That is your responsibility again, so you want to make sure that you get those sent in. And then many schools do have an application fee. For instance, the University of Alabama, it is a $40 application fee, and then we do accept some fee waivers. So it's kind of 4 simple steps. Again, your application fee, submit your high school transcripts, and either your ACT or SAT scores. That's kind of the basics. Many schools do also look for an essay. And so that's something I think that y'all are going to cover a little bit later this evening. So you want to start thinking about topics for your essay. Something else that I always challenge juniors to do is to complete a resume. Have your resume complete by the end of your junior year. As you're applying to schools for admittance, for scholarships, they're going to want to see your resume. They want to know what you've done. Why should we admit you? You know, why should we give you all this money to go to school? We're looking for reasons to help you to do this, but we've got to know who you are. So I always tell families, get that resume together, because it's tough to get a resume started, but it's very easy to add to your resume that you've already completed. So pretty easy process as far as completing the admissions application. And then there are many steps that go into the entire enrollment process. So, okay, let's say you've been admitted or you've completed your application, hopefully been admitted to those schools that you want to be admitted to. At that point, there are still other steps. Like we were talking earlier about deadlines. You know, you want to make sure that you know the different scholarship deadlines and whatnot. Now, I left some books out on the tables, and we actually have our entire timeline here. Now, this is specific to the University of Alabama, but many schools are very similar in what they're looking for. So maybe you have interest in Alabama, that would be awesome, but if not, you're still absolutely welcome to take one of these books so you can see how everything works. So you'll see, if you have one, certainly follow along. In mid-July, that's when our application opens. And then you'll see October 1st. That's when students can begin doing stuff for the enrollment process, signing up for housing, starting to complete that FAFSA. Those are things that students can do as early as October for many schools. You'll also see December 15th. That is the scholarship deadline for the University of Alabama. Many schools are going to be November 1st. So you want to make sure that this is the biggest highlighted thing on your spreadsheet if you are completing one, because if you do miss those deadlines, it is pretty tough to get scholarships. We get phone calls all the time. Oh, I dropped the ball, I didn't know. So now's the time to research so you can know and get all of that money, hopefully. You'll see then through the rest of the year, February 1st, that's actually when students can begin signing up for orientation. Now, students will attend orientation generally the summer after they graduate high school, but before they will begin classes at their specific university, but you can start signing up early. Generally, the earlier you sign up for things like housing, orientation, dates like that, the earlier you get to choose maybe where you live. If you know you want to live in a specific residence hall on campus, or you know, I have this huge mission trip that I'm going to do all summer, so I need to go to that very first orientation session so I can knock that out, get all of my classes, so I can then do that big mission trip, you know, whatever you may be doing. So planning is always key. And then you'll see just a few other things like choosing your housing. That generally takes place just before high school graduation, typically in like early May. So that's something else that you can do through that enrollment process. So again, we've talked about the application. So submit either the online application with your specific school or the Common App. There's that application fee. Submit transcripts and ACT or SAT scores. Some schools will require an essay or a resume, so certainly have that ready and available. And then, again, through that enrollment process, some of the big things, signing up for housing, looking for those scholarship deadlines, and signing up for orientation. So those are some of the big key dates, the big key things to know what you need to do through this enrollment process. And then the last few things you want to look into, maybe some of the selective groups within your colleges. I know a lot of Williamson County students are really looking for those great honors college, those really selective groups. So certainly look into those too and deadlines that those programs may have. But again, my name is Stacy Hall. I have been recruiting here at Brentwood now for 8 years, so certainly glad to see some new faces out here. And any questions that I can help you with, I'll leave some business cards out on the table, and I think we're going to have a Q&A session. So thank you.
Why don't you hold on to
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You want to come on over?
So are there any specific questions for Lauren or Stacy at this point in time? We will be having a parent panel, so we will go into more depth about the various application portals and et cetera. But in the meantime, if you've heard anything from any of our college reps, are there any questions? Yes. Yes.
Right. That's a great question, and I will definitely say, and I'm sure we actually talked about this earlier, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So you want to look at your different schools. Some schools choose to super score the ACT, so you want to send in all of your test scores, so hopefully you can get that highest score. And super score, just to let you guys know, it's when you take the highest section of each test and create this higher score, basically. Some other schools will only accept your highest composite. The University of Alabama, that is what we do. We will look at your highest composite. Same for you guys, so same for Cumberland too. Other schools may only want to see that one high score. So they don't want to see you progressing and getting better. They want to see that one score, so you could potentially be maybe penalized. So you just want to check in to see what your schools look for. But from what I hear most of the time, most schools, you can submit multiple, and they'll always award that highest score. And that's for scholarships, honors college, admissions, all of those things. But again, just look at your school and their requirements.
And if you have any questions about that, about what each specific school requires, the undergraduate admissions offices of every school that I've ever called or worked with have been really very patient and helpful. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, both of you. Really appreciate your expertise and your time. And now we're lucky enough to have one of our own teachers speak to writing the college essay. Matt Grimes, poor Matt, did it a couple years ago and was so good that we hound him every year to do it, and we actually scheduled tonight around his schedule, so thank you.
All right, how's everyone doing this evening? All right, perfect. Okay, so here's the deal. Unless your last name is Laughlin or Huffman or you wrote Crew, guess what? You're going to have to write a college essay. It's just an unfortunate deal breaker here. So students, listen up. There are 7 rules for writing that I'm going to give you, and they come from Kurt Vonnegut. And by the way, I should warn you, I'm a bit of a walker, so where are my camera people? You're going to have to keep tabs on me, okay? All right, so number 1, you're going to want to write something that you're passionate about. That seems fairly obvious, but a lot of times you guys overthink it. You guys tend to want to write something that you think the reader will want to read. Guess what? The reader will read it if you're passionate about it. If you aren't passionate about it and you're delivering them something dry and academic, they're going to look at it as if it's dry and academic. So please keep that in mind. The second thing, do not ramble. We have a tendency that when we find something that we're passionate about, we go on and on and on about it. So keep in mind that yes, we want you to be passionate, but we also want you to 3, keep it simple. You don't want to overfluff things with too many details. Many of these college essays have a word limit. So you're looking at somewhere between 600 to 750, depending on the college or the scholarship. If that's the case, the more that you fluff it up with nice little descriptors that show how wonderful your vocabulary is, okay, guess what? Now you've spent 500 words talking about some sort of flower. I mean, it's that sort of thing. So dial it back. Number 4, don't be afraid to cut things. You're going to want to write. You're going to write it as much as possible, and then you're going to hack it to death. It's always a rule of thumb that there's a phrase out there that says you have to learn how to kill your darlings. You have to learn, this is a line that I love, but I've got to get rid of it. This is a point that I want to make, but I make it somewhere else. You've got to figure out how to cut, and if you don't know how to cut or edit, come see me. I'll be glad to help you out. Number 5 and 6 are kind of 2 that go in tandem with one another. Number 5 is have a voice. And I don't mean like just a voice that you can artificially manufacture. I was talking to a friend who used to work as at Vanderbilt as an admissions counselor. She said there are 2 big pet peeves. One is that they have a voice, but that voice sounds like a 50-year-old parent. Or the second thing is that they have a voice, but that voice hasn't been culled through enough. That there's something there that's raw and untapped, but it still needs development. So don't think that you're going to be able to one-off this, write it and be done. You're not. So you need to develop that voice and you need to be patient with it. Number 6, referring back to my notes because I forgot what number 6 is. Oh yeah, John Mayer's. Say what you mean to say. That's what it is. You need to say exactly what it is that you mean to say. And in this sense, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're in Grimes AP or Baker AP, do not use a fancy metaphor. Do not run all the way through and try to create something that's not there. Admission counselors are not looking for, in this particular instance, the best writing possible, which is what we tend to think. They're looking for the best you possible. And a lot of times that means dialing back also on some of the vocabulary and rhetoric that you're accustomed to using in those higher level classes. It's not saying dumb yourself down. It's saying say what you mean to say, be direct, be straightforward, don't put on airs at this given moment. You will have 4 years of college to show all that fancy writing that you've learned here at Brentwood High School. Be honest. And then finally, number 7, and this probably is the most crucial. Do pity the readers. Kurt Vonnegut says there is nothing worse than when you write solely for yourself. because that's a journal. That's a diary. That's something that nobody else is going to ever read. You're trying to get into college, so you do have to recognize you're writing for another audience. Now, that doesn't mean change who you are, but it does mean change your approach. Alter how you might tell a given story to your friends and make that adaptable for one that you might send off to a college. I've got some personal tips that I like to give. They're by no means set in stone. It's always going to differ based off of the individual that's writing the essay. But I'd like to keep it to these 6. So those were Kurt Vonnegut's. That comes from a nice, developed writer. Me, I'm going to tell you right now, my students can tell you, I'm a little bit cynical from time to time. Isn't that right, Ben? Yep. All right. See, earnest agreement. So I tend to tell people the most cynical, realistic approach possible, and then say, but that works for me. It may not work for you, but adapt these rules into language that maybe could help you. So, number 1, you have a word count for a reason, not to be brief, but to be brief and precise. So that's where you can start to think about, if you are more of a descriptive writer, instead of writing 3, 4, 5 adjectives in a row, pick the one that works the best. Or pick the storyline that runs the most smoothly. Whatever it might happen to be. And with the Common App especially, you get 6 or 7 options, one of those being write whatever you want. And let me tell you, there's nothing more daunting than write whatever you want. But you have that option because for some people, that's going to provide them a wealth of opportunities with which they can write and with which they can start to be as precise as possible and narrow down from there. Number 2, and this is my favorite piece of advice. You're going to want to start out with an intro that's applicable, but is somehow innovative. And I'm going to give you 2 stories. So one comes from Vanderbilt University. I went to Vanderbilt, so you're going to get a lot of Vanderbilt stories, sorry. Vanderbilt University, one of their counselors who used to come over here and do sort of college knowledge night as well, was a woman by the name of Mary Comfort Stevens. And she related at one particular time the story of the April 1998 tornado. Most of you, if you were here at that time, remember that. But F4 tornado, I can't remember exactly what the category was, but strikes down in Nashville. And she relates the story of a student who wrote about that tornado. She was a junior in high school, and she was touring Vanderbilt, and she ended up having to be cordoned away in the basement of some old building on Vanderbilt's campus. Everybody was crammed in like sardines. It was really uncomfortable. Everybody was getting really sweaty. People were crying. This is the time before you had really cell phones as pervasive as anything else. And so she wrote an essay where in the first paragraph, she started to relate the idea of, I was at Vanderbilt, we got rushed downstairs, everybody's screaming and crying, I can hardly breathe, nobody wants to be there, we can hear the rumbling of the building outside, I just want to go home, I'm thinking I could possibly die tonight. And the next line is, and that's when I knew I wanted to go to Vanderbilt. Now, what a lot of studies will tell you is that within the first, some have said as short as 7 seconds, some have said as long as 30 seconds, but within a short, brief period of time, an admissions counselor can largely guess what your essay is going to be about, unless you don't give them a reason to guess it. So, my college essay, to get into Vanderbilt, they always ask the why Vanderbilt question as if it's some sort of profound statement on life. But why Vanderbilt? So, I decided I've been a Vanderbilt football fan for, since I was 5 years old. So I said, I've been a Vanderbilt football fan since I was 5, season ticket holder since I was 6 years old. I've gone to all these games. I saw them lose 12-7 against LSU and Jerry DiNardo's last year. I saw 5 seasons of Woody Ball. I've seen Bobby Johnson get signed to a 10-year contract before he's played game 1. I've seen all these things and more. I've seen losing after losing after losing, and Vanderbilt owes it to me to give me 4 more years of losing. It's a huge risk. And I told my parents about it. That was mistake number 1. I shouldn't have told my parents. My parents started to flip out. They will never let you in. Well, I got in. The next year, I was doing something similar to this at Brentwood High School, my alma mater. And I met Mary Comfort Stevens that night, and so we got to talking. And I said, yeah, and this is what I wrote my college essay about. And she looked at me and she goes, you've got to be kidding me. I read that essay. That was one of the funniest things I've read in a long time. So you never know. And part of it is, number 3, that idea of having a voice is crucial. But even more, the idea of having humor. Having something that shows that you have a personality. Because you're not just selling your credentials. You're selling you. And they can have all the brilliant minds that they want in this world. But they want good people too. They want people that know how to relax, that know how to take advantage of the college atmosphere, that know how to have fun, or at the very least, know how to have their kind of fun, whatever that kind of fun might be for that individual. And humor goes a long way in branding you and keeping you in their memory for longer. And there's nothing more crucial than a good impression that lingers. Even if your ACT scores are just right there on the brink, even if the A's are there, but the B's are a little bit too much there, there's something about reading something that somebody puts in front of you and identifying with them. Because you look at them and say, I don't know what it is about this person, but I want to fight for them. And nothing is better than having an admissions counselor hook into you because of something you wrote. All right, number 4. I only got 3 more, guys, and then I'll be glad to take any questions. Number 4. All right, this is the one that I consider my most controversial. Many of you students have been on mission trips or been camp counselors or lifeguards, something along those lines. Don't write about it. And there's Miss Sulcer. All right, here's why I say that. And it's nothing to diminish what you've learned or what value you've gotten personally out of it. But guess what? So has everybody else that's writing that essay. The mission trip, I've gone somewhere, I've seen people who don't have as much as me, and they've turned, they're happy, they live the life to their fullest with what they've got, and it made me realize how fortunate I am. That's the story most people tell. Doesn't matter if you're from Brentwood, doesn't matter if you're from Franklin, doesn't matter if you're from Harlem, or you're from Los Angeles, or wherever you're from, it's a variation on that story. So unless you can give it a different spin, don't write it. Same thing with camp counselors. People come in, I learned a lot over the summer, here are some of the things that I learned, and then I left and took those lessons with me into life moving forward. It's great. But it doesn't make you stand out. So unless you can find a way, truly find a way, to tell that story in such a unique way that I, as a counselor or an admissions officer or anybody who's reading it, unless I can not guess the outcome, that there's going to be some, not necessarily twist, but some unique and fresh perspective, think in the back of your mind, am I saying anything new? Because if not, the impression that you leave is the impression that thousands of other applicants are also leaving. So leave that one at the door unless you've got something new to say. And there's always somebody who manages to surprise me. But I always throw that out there to say, don't necessarily start there. Let that be a last resort. 5, honesty is the best policy, but so is embellishment. It's not saying to lie, but stories are compelling because every time we tell the story, we tell the memory of our story, which is not 100% factual. And no story needs to be 100% factual. If I just wrote down facts, I'd be giving you a PowerPoint as an essay. And PowerPoints, as many of my students can attest, are boring. So you don't need to think that everything in there has to be the most accurate representation possible, but it should be the most accurate reflection of you that you can provide. So that's going to require a little bit of embellishment potentially, and just know that's okay as long as you're not being false with them or false with yourself. And finally, number 6. You want to get somebody to look over your essay who I wrote, quote, who has no true stake in your outcome, but loves you enough to hack it within an inch of its life. So here's the key to that one. If you have students, your parents read it, that's fine, if you want them to read it. Parents, you're oftentimes going to want to read it. If they let you, that's fine. I'm going to suggest the biggest help that you could be is just making sure that they've written it, one way or another. Now, I'm not a parent myself, so that's easy advice for me to give. But truthfully, if students think that their parents are going to read it, they may not be as fully open and honest. But that being said, students, if you're not going to have your parents read it, you need to find somebody that cares about your future enough to give you honest feedback. Because your parents will give you honest feedback, but you may not want it. But you need to find somebody who will give it to you. Again, my red ink is always available. I will read any one of your college essays. And those that have had me look at theirs can tell you it bleeds the paper. So I will tell you exactly what I think, and you'll wish you had gone to your parents. But that could be a good thing too. All I'm saying is you need to find somebody to look at it. Do not send it out without anybody having given it a once-over. Additionally, don't have 18 people read it. You can have too many cooks in the kitchen. I usually suggest up here a student here at Brentwood High School that you trust, an adult that you trust, whether it's your parent or a teacher or someone else, and then some other third person. You get 3 opinions. If all 3 of them are different, and I mean divergently different, you don't have an essay yet. If 2 of the 3 agree and that one person just gives you some stuff to think about, weigh your options. If all 3 of them say, this is a good essay, here's some small things to tweak, pick and choose what works best for you, but all 3 agree. Don't keep looking. You keep looking, you're either going to just keep looking for validation, which you've already earned, or you're going to find somebody that tells you you're wrong, in which case, why were you looking anyway? The college essay, to the best of my knowledge, unless you write something that is so egregiously offensive or worrisome or troublesome to their college campus, I don't know that it's a deal breaker. I don't know that it isn't, but what I've heard more than anything else is that an essay that's really well written will tip things more in your favor than against. So if you keep that in mind, the essay is no different than any other essay you've ever written. It's just the approach that's different. So, with college essay writing, here's what I recommend for the timeline. Start writing it now. That's to juniors. If you're a sophomore, start writing it now. You don't really have to. You probably have a little bit more time and a little bit more that might happen in terms of maturation. But if you're a junior, you really need to start writing it before you leave school. Because once you leave school, chances are You're not going to be in close contact with your teachers, or rather your teachers aren't going to be in close contact with you. And we've got lives during the summer. You've got lives during the summer. You say you'll write it during the summer, and what ends up happening? You don't write it during the summer. We know that. Unless you get it started within those first couple of weeks, life catches up with you. You end up going on vacations, mission trips, doing things that are way more fun. So make sure that you start it before school lets out. At the very least then, you've got a starting point. You may completely scrap it when you revisit it, but at least you'll know you have something to return to. The only other thing that I'll plug is that in June, I know that one of our teachers here, Dr. Jean KK, is hosting a college essay writing camp for 3 days in June. I believe it's the third week in June. I don't know what those days are. But if you look through the summer camps that are offered at Brentwood High School through the athletic department, there's also an art camp. There's a number of camps, and one of them is a college essay writing camp. Priority is given to rising seniors, so just keep that in mind. So if you're wanting to look for that, do we know if those are open yet? Okay, so they should be on the Brentwood website currently. You hunt around or you search summer camps, you should be able to find it. And that is an option for those that are looking for dedicated time with somebody to help guide you along in the process. So that's my little spiel. I don't have really anything else much to say on the matter unless there are individual questions that you would like to pose at this time. So does anybody have any questions about either the college essay in general, tips of the trade, timeline, anything along those lines? Yes? Mm-hmm. No. So the question is, does the essay have to be about a life-changing experience? And the answer is no. There are actually, if you go through the Common App portal, which a lot of colleges nowadays are using, there are 6 prompts and then an open-ended prompt. Some of those usually include discuss a time where you faced some sort of challenge or obstacle and describe what it was, how you overcame it, and what you would have done differently. One of them in the past has been something along the lines of talk to us about some piece of information without which your application would be incomplete. So something about your identity, either cultural, spiritual, something that we could not pick up on a transcript or on your application that you feel we need to know more about. So those are the sorts of questions that you'll have. And the Common App will tweak some of the language every single year, but for the most part, in fact, I think from last year to this year, most of the questions stayed the same, if not all of the questions. Very good. Thank you. Yes? Mm-hmm. So the Common App, even though the portal might not be open, a lot of times it will go ahead and say whether or not there have been any changes to the Common App questions over the years. So at the very least, if you look back from 2017 to 18 and 2018 and 19, the only changes that I can remember are more semantic than anything else. The gist of the questions have largely been the same for the past 2 years. And even if not writing one of those particular prompts, they've had for the last couple of years a question that says, write about anything of a passion of yours or anything that you would like to write about that you believe reveals something about you. And so that prompt, at the very least, could give you a starting point or foundation so that even if you don't end up going that way, you might be able to use part and parcels of it in a different prompt. Yes? So with the Common App, the best of my understanding is they get to choose, correct, guys, students up here? So if you're using the Common App, you get to choose which prompt that you want. Certain scholarships or certain universities that are using their own access portal may have specific questions that you have to answer. So for instance, I know University of Chicago is a weird one where they have random abstract questions like, find X. And that's the college essay that they've given for 1 year. That's a very unusual circumstance. More likely, some of the questions that you might get, I know George Washington, when I applied 10 years ago, however many years ago it was, asked about 3 people you would invite to a dinner party, living or dead, and why. So looking at sort of your cultural interests beyond the traditional, what do you find interesting? So those sorts of questions may appear more in each individual schools, but if they use the Common App, chances are, unless they're asking for any sort of supplement or scholarship application, they get to pick which prompt they want to write on. All right, yes, in the back. Mm-hmm. It's a mix of both. Vanderbilt is on the Common App. You've got University of Tennessee, which I believe is, but their honors college requires you to go through other steps and hoops. So it's really a mix. It's both state schools and private schools. It's really just a matter of whatever that particular university has chosen to be their primary methodology. Yes? I did not go over letters of recommendation. I can do that in just a moment. Or would you like me to just go ahead and shoot from the hip right now? All right, we'll do that. So letters of recommendation. Most colleges will require usually 2, sometimes 3. You will have to have a recommendation that comes from your counselors. So they will take care of that. You will have to have usually 1 or 2 teacher recommendations. Some colleges will say that you just have to have 2 recommendations, a teacher and somebody who knows you from some outside source in the community. So they'll usually specify if they're looking for a particular type of application. And the students might be able to better answer your question in terms of what it looks like on their end. But from my end, what tends to happen is I ask students in the spring of their junior year, if they're looking to get a teacher rec from me, that they will need, and every teacher has their own process. So it's important to know what each teacher's process is. So for instance, I'm pretty laid back in the sense that as long as I know that I am getting a request from you, so that you have come and talked to me and you have given me, like one of the ladies earlier said, a resume or some sort of senior data sheet that tells me some things that you might want included in your rec or some things about you that I might not know. Usually I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to write, but I always like to have things that I can help use to buffer some. If I know that, then I usually just give you my email address and tell you to send it and give me at least 2 weeks' time. My students know I tend to procrastinate. So the earlier you get it to me, the more time you might actually be worrying that I haven't started it. But at least 2 weeks' time, and it will always get done. Some teachers will say, I only give out X number. So if you get to me on the first day of school, line up outside of my room, and the first 30 in, we'll have to fill out some paperwork, and I'll get you an essay. Some people will say, I'm really not very good at writing, and unless you just really want me to, you might want somebody else. Some teachers are not comfortable writing them, and that's okay. Most teachers, though, will write you a letter of recommendation. And always ask them, would you be willing to write me a letter of recommendation? Always ask them, would you be willing? Not will you. Would you be willing? Because it just sounds more favorable, and it's really hard for teachers to get around that. Because it's like, oh, yeah, I guess so. And then the second thing is, when it gets written, a little thank you note would be nice. Some of us, get 4 or 5 recommendations to write. Some of us get 40 to 50 to write. And most all of them are due October 15th. Why you guys can't pick a later deadline, we'll never understand. But all that being said, those are sort of the general rules of thumb in terms of getting a rec letter. If you're going to a school that's more so geared towards math and engineering, you probably want one of those to be geared towards science, math, engineering, a STEM type teacher. If you're looking to major in something that's in the humanities, you're probably going to want to lean a little bit more towards social studies or the languages. If you are thinking about going to a ninth grade teacher, I would advise against it unless it's a ninth grade teacher that you've kept in touch with, or you've been an office worker for, or you've had for multiple years. Because you, during your ninth grade year, even if you look back now from 9th to 10th, you've probably changed. And if you look back from starting senior year to when you started freshman year, you're definitely a different person, whether you admit to it or not. So keep that in mind, that your ninth grade teacher also, it's no offense to them, but they've had plenty of students come through too. They may look at you during your senior year and go, oh, I forgot I had that student freshman year. They look so different, especially if you haven't kept up with them. So it's not a slight to anybody in here, but just keep that with you unless you have established some sort of relationship. The teachers that you've had for the longest, the teachers you've built the closest relationships with, or the teachers that you've had most recently so that they can attest to your academic growth. Those are the ones that I would go after for a teacher rec letter. Any questions about rec letters or essays? Sure. Here, I'll pass it off.
Okay, just a couple of little details to follow up on what he said. Going to ask your teachers if they're willing to write the recommendation letter. A lot of students go into the common application that we've been talking about, and they realize, I've got to put a teacher's email in that I'm going to ask to write a rec letter. And they put that email in, guess what pops up in the teacher's in their email? A request to write a recommendation letter. You've got to ask them before you do that, okay? That's one little tip that I have. Secondly, something that I've heard a few times is that the counselors, the 3 of us that will be doing recommendation letters next year, on the common application, it tells us when your deadline is, or when our deadline is to have everything in for you. I promise you, we will have it done by the deadline. Please don't worry. Every year we start getting calls from students who are like, my deadline's, it's all due next week. It's due next week. We'll get it done, I promise. You and the 438 other kids, we'll get it done, I promise. So please don't stress about that. If your student's not with you tonight, remind them, we promise we will not miss your deadline, okay? We will always take a resume to help us get to know what you've been doing for the past 4 years. That's a great thing to have. I think what we're going to ask for this time is also the college essay, a copy of the college essay, because that's the really good stuff. That tells me a lot, Just like the college admissions rep, that's what I would love to read about too. One other thing I failed to mention earlier are these awesome books that the SEC bought for us. They're in the counseling office. There's one for each region of the United States. This is full of college information, okay? We encourage students to come and look at them. They're in the guidance office. Another great thing that we can do is if you have a list of schools you're interested in, we will copy the page for you in the counseling office and have them waiting for you one day. They're all in the same format, which is really nice because if you start looking on the websites, they all look different, so it's kind of hard to find the information. But it's all the same in these books. So you can lay them out and say, this is how much this school costs, this is how many students they have, these are the majors. It's really great information. So I encourage you to come and, your students to come and take a look at these books. Okay? Yes? They don't accept test scores from us anymore, correct? The colleges will not accept ACT or SAT scores from us. That's the past, yeah.
So the question was, when do we start looking at college essays, college applications, things like that? It depends largely, I guess, on junior English AP. We would like to do it more, but our exam is 2 days before the end of school, pretty much. So we don't necessarily get to it as much with our AP students as we would like. I know that the honors students, I believe Dr. Powell's class and maybe Mr. Anderson's classes will at least touch on it. The majority of it's done during the fall of the senior year. Usually there's at least one full week that tends to be devoted to, let's come in, let's talk about where you are in the college process, let's write some rough drafts of essays, let's work on these. Okay, if you have any other additional questions beyond this week, we're here during enrichment. Your past teachers are here to help you. But at that point, then things start moving forward. We usually do have a lot of the English teachers will also have some guest speakers come in. I know that Ms. Medlin, our gifted counselor, comes in to give some information there as well. I know that Dr. KK and Dr. White both spend that first week pretty much, right, guys? That first week exclusively on the college essay. So it really depends on the timeline at the end of the year, whether juniors can get to it with all of the testing that the state mandates and AP mandates. But at the beginning of the senior semester, that first semester, because it is still open and nothing's really hit the ground running yet, that's usually where we tend to devote our efforts. Yes, in the back. So the question's about using humor in an essay, and can I think of any examples recently? I don't, so I will give you an example of one that, it wasn't the one that he ended up using for his college essay, but it was one that he used in class and started to work with, but eventually he decided against it because it was just too long and he couldn't cut it down. But he had written an essay about going to his first hockey game and how he was so looking forward to it. It was his dad and his younger brother and himself. And the mom was sort of looking forward to it for them because it was going to be a bonding experience for them and all this stuff. And so the student wrote about it and basically, okay, he went and used the bathroom and the Preds scored while he was gone. So he rushed back to try to see anything and he missed it all. So then his brother had to go to the bathroom. So he took his younger brother to the bathroom and then they scored again. So he rushed back and still missed out on the score. So then he decides nothing's happening. It's been a long stretch of time. Nobody's scored. And then finally he decides he's getting hungry. He's going to take the risk to go out into the concourse. And as soon as he steps foot into the concourse, the blare goes of the siren and he realizes he's missed it again. And so it's this continual, like, Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will. And so he gets back home and he ends up talking to his mom, and his mom's like, well, how'd you like the game? And he writes towards the very end, and so I lied and said, I loved it. It was great. Because he knew something about the experience, he knew what his mom was hoping for, and he never actually got to see really any of the good parts of the game, but he said, that's what my mom would have wanted to hear, and I wanted to give that to her. It was just an essay it was a good essay. It was just one of those that to get it to the point where it would have fit within the word limit, it just wasn't going to work. But that's an example of something where it's not necessarily ha-ha, knee-slapping funny, but it's characteristic of something larger while still incorporating something that provides sort of an empathetic smile moment. That we can all say, we've been there, we've missed the play, we missed the moment with the kick six at Auburn going back, or whatever it is that we've missed. We've all had those moments, and so it's almost less about the humor of the moment and more about the pain of the moment that we can all empathize with. Anybody else? Questions? Oh, no, no more questions. Okay. I'm being given the kill signal. So let me toss it back to Ms. Wolf here, and we'll get going with our last session.
You can see why we plan our evening around his schedule. The last part of the program, we're going to have our parents that we've asked to be on the panel, if you'll come to the stage right now, and then also our students as well. This process is really about being able to pick the brains of the parents and students that have walked.
Hi, I'm Lori Eggleston. My daughter, Logan, is a freshman at the University of Texas. I almost said Tennessee. University of Texas in Austin. She is a volleyball player. She actually should be in graduating with these guys, but she graduated early. So I've had the experience of, trying to get my kid graduated a little early, and that was a big fiasco, but we made it work because it was important to her. Logan took the ACT just twice. She took it the summer after her sophomore year because that's when she had finished chemistry and algebra 2. And then she took it again in the spring of junior year, which is when the kids take it for free. So she only did it the 2 times. We visited lots of schools. I think it is extremely important that your student, your child, be on the campus before they make a decision that they're going to go somewhere. I just would never, I told her I would never approve for her to accept admission anywhere that she hadn't gone there and made sure it was a place that she was comfortable. So that was kind of our experience, and I'll be around to ask or answer questions when we're done.
Hi, my name is John Boshears. I'm a senior this year. I applied to 2 colleges. I applied to a tiny college in Arkansas, and I applied to UT Knoxville, so completely different. Oh, hi, again. Did you hear that, or should I say it again? Y'all heard it? Okay, so 2 colleges, a tiny college in Arkansas and UT Knoxville. And so kind of reiterate what she said about being at the campus. If you had, because I went to visit University of Knoxville, Tennessee Knoxville, November 4th. And if you had asked me if I wanted to go to Tennessee November 3rd, I would have told you never in a million years. But I went on the campus and learned a little bit more about it, and I fell in love with it, so I decided to go there. That's about it. Oh, that's actually a good story about that. So I actually went to the colleges too late to apply for any of their institutional scholarships, and I actually almost missed the deadline for their merit scholarships. So I am a living testament. Make sure you understand the deadlines, because if you don't, you will lose out on thousands of dollars like I have. All right.
Thank you. My name is Ben Hetherington. Many of you may know me as Big Ben, Grande Ben Hameen, Ben Hameen Grande. And yeah, the college application process is a big feels bad, but everybody can get through it in here if I got through it. So I basically got into William & Mary in Boston College, so it's sort of between that for what my choice is. I got in a few other places. I got waitlisted some places, which is like the friend zone of college admissions. So it is easier to escape the waitlist in the friend zone, though. And then I got rejected a few places, but no problem with rejection. Got to keep the abundance mentality. So yeah, that's basically my story. So hand it over.
Hello, my name is Malik El-Masiri, and I'm a senior this year, and I'm going to be attending Vanderbilt University next year. I actually applied to Vanderbilt early decision, so that's like a different timeline than Ben and John. I mean, there is early decision 2, which you can apply to like on the same deadline as regular decision, but early decision 1, which was the route that I took, generally has a higher acceptance rate, and so I really like that security, and yeah.
Hi, my name is Susanna Starr, and I have to say I was listening to Mr. Grimes up here, and my heart was going like, oh my gosh. Just to these students and you parents out there, it is an emotional roller coaster is what it is. And I am done. Yes, Tank Starr is my youngest one. He graduates this year. He's going to the Citadel on a football scholarship. And my middle son number 2, Thomas, he graduated 2 years ago. And The high school here did a really good job of preparing him for UT Knoxville, and he went into Knoxville with the Haslam Scholarship. And then my older son, he is 25, getting married this summer, and he graduated in 2012, and he also was a graduate from Knoxville, and Knoxville has really prepared my young men for the world out there. And Brentwood High has really done a wonderful job of just navigating the students through this entire process. For our family, budget really was the forefront of where they could go to school. So we looked at in-state, and you had to have a scholarship to be able to go out of state. I just hope that you all just this emotional roller coaster that you're going to be on, you know, for next year. Enjoy the ride. It is so much fun looking at these colleges. I tell you what, I kind of just a little bit want to do college all over again.
That was awesome. My name is Chase Ezel. I've got two amazing daughters. Abigail is a sophomore at a small private college in Colorado Springs called Colorado College. My youngest daughter, Evelyn, is graduating senior. She's actually taking a gap year this next year, but will land at Samford University fall of 2020. If you want to know more about what she's doing in her gap year, it's kind of exciting. I can tell you about that if you've got a question. But I just really echo the emotional part of this. A lot of what we've talked about kind of so far is more of the mechanical part of the application process, you know, the essay, the Common App, the application process. But I can tell you from experience, particularly having girls, the emotional part is really, I think, the most difficult, and because it's just such a whirlwind. But when you're faced with, you know, multiple college options, you know, we talk a lot about fit. Well, fit is really very much an emotional decision. I would really encourage you, the only way to navigate that emotional piece, at least in our experience, is to really know how your kids tick. If you haven't taken the Myers-Briggs, strongly recommend that. If you don't know, if you don't know what your Enneagram is, strongly recommend finding what number you are on the Enneagram. Those things are very insightful as to how your kids learn, what makes them afraid, what do they do when they're challenged, what kind of things make them really excited and want to do well. You really have to understand, I think, the way that your kids are wired in order to really help them to be able to navigate the decision-making process. And just a quick example, Evelyn, for example, got accepted to Auburn and Samford. I mean, two extremely different types of schools. And so what it came down to is that we said, okay, why don't you do a set of pros and cons, and we'll do a set of pros and cons, and let's compare the lists. Our pros and cons were very similar to hers, but ours, we were able to kind of breathe some insight into Evelyn to say, Evelyn, we understand, you know, the way that you learn looks like this, and Samford is probably going to be a better environment for you to be able to learn. And so understanding the way that she's wired and how she learns and what she needs was really, really helpful in helping her kind of navigate that kind of emotional part of the decision-making process.
I'm Kathy Dooley-Smith. Our oldest daughter graduated in 2016. She is a junior at Vanderbilt. We're starting the process again with Sydney, who's a freshman. So I kind of envy these two who are done, because it is a process for the parents as well. Cassie did not know where she wanted to go to school. She looked at large universities, medium universities, small universities, private universities, public universities, in-state, out-of-state, in other countries. We really spend every vacation from the time that you are a freshman around college tours. We hit every college on the way to any destination we're going to. For some of the ones we went to with Cassie, we do not have to attend with Sydney because she took notes and she said, we do not have to return here. which works for me. But for her, it was all about the fit. It was when she leveled the academics, that was the first benchmark. Are the academics suitable for what I want to do? And then it became about lifestyle, university culture, the city that she was near. And she never, kind of like John, wanted to stay in state. And one of my favorite college search memories with her is just going on all these days where it was just the two of us after admitted students, because she was admitted to 6 and she wanted to go to all 6 on admitted students day, which all occur in April, by the way. And she came across the quad at Emory to me, which we were supposed to be. That was the one. Our last name is Dooley. Their mascot is the Dooley. They couldn't get over her when she walked in the door. They're like, oh, you have to be here, sign this thing. And she came across to me and she said, this is not it. And tears in her eyes because it wasn't it. And she knew when she went on the campus. So please, please, please go on the campus. The other thing that one of my dear friends, Cindy Franklin, said to me very early on as a parent was, you can't be more involved in this process than they are. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to go to this university with them. It has to be their decision within the parameters of what the family's decided for budget or whatever, but they have to be the ones to go to school. At every single university we went to, you can ask questions at the end of the college tour of the admissions officers. And by and large, from Brown to Vandy to Bryn Mawr to Alabama, whatever it is, parents go up to ask the admissions counselors, we are so excited to come to school. You aren't going. I'm not going. I don't need to ask that question. The student needs to ask that question, and you need to just step back.
As they ask questions, if you have the mic, if you would repeat the question, and then if you have someone that specifically you want to ask a question of, just start your question with that particular person. Say that one in the blue shirt, or whatever your names. All right, any questions to start? Yes. For the students, my kids don't really have an idea what they want to study, so I don't know if all three of you do. Or do you know? A little bit. So for my students who don't know what they want to do you have any idea, any tips for how to narrow their schools?
Yeah, so the question she asked was about like majors and what you want to do. Like her student that doesn't know what he or she wants to do yet. I personally did know what I wanted to do. I still know what I want to do. So I don't have the best advice ever, but I would say just like look at the list of like the universities that he or she is interested in, or the university in general, and just look down the list and see if any of it like aroused any interest. Because that's the one thing, if she has a college or he or she has a college she wants to go to and the major doesn't have it, like look at the majors they have so she can at least have an idea of what they can or she can study at that university.
Well, actually, that's like a really common concern for a lot of students. Like, I actually like went on a tour of Vanderbilt recently, and like the tour guide that I was talking to was like, yeah, I didn't have a clue either, and a lot of my friends don't. So like your daughter or your son is not alone in that concern, and I think that like a lot of colleges do realize that like your student probably doesn't really know what he or she wants to do, and most colleges like the process to like applying for a major, it's very easy to change your major essentially, and you can go in undecided. But like I do see where you're coming from, because like it is important to kind of know like where you want to like look at least. I think like my best advice is to like look at the classes that you're taking, that your son or daughter is taking, that he or she finds very interesting, and those are like the best starting points for you to like kind of look at, is this something that you want to turn into a career? But like I think the best like way to figure it out is kind of with time and with more experience.
So I guess for me, I'm sort of in between. I'd say like more leaning towards undecided, but because both my parents are in political science, I sort of am predisposed to going in like that sort of direction. So I know it's really specific, but I don't know. I went to a lot of schools where they were like, you don't really have to declare a major until your sophomore year. They'll let you explore a lot as a freshman. And as Malik said, it's very easy to change majors at many schools. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Oh, did I have a college representative or sports coach from a school that? Oh, from the college. I wouldn't really say so. Yeah.
I mean, of course, with athletics, you're going to have, the coaches that are really going to be trying to sell you on their programs. And so, I think that most of these guys, we do have college reps that are specifically assigned to each of our schools. And so you can, who was here? Alabama. I can't think of her. Stacy, who is wonderful. Stacy develops a good relationship with your kids if your kid is interested in going to Alabama. She'll meet you for coffee. She's very good about that. But I think that most of your schools, you can go in and even search, who is the college rep for my area, and you will see that most colleges have specific people for Williamson County because we are a very popular county, and schools really want kids from Brentwood and Williamson County. So I think there are a lot of reps that can really make a big influence on where you decide to go. Yes. Well, it's very interesting because we went to Minnesota, Wisconsin, Texas, and Stanford were our 4 finals. And, who gets an offer to go to Stanford and turns it down? My daughter. So she kind of had to weigh that, as well as she didn't feel like she wanted to have the pressure of the level of academics that Stanford has, versus still being on like a top tier athletic program. She has decided she wants to be in business. I have noticed that since parents don't get much of a say in your child's college career once they get there. Logan won't let me talk to the people in the academic department, but she's missed her math classes that she needs to have to be able to apply to the College of Business, and they don't seem to care too much about that. They just want to make sure that she's ready to play ball next fall. So that is something, I think that you do really have to weigh and make sure that your student is going to be equally challenged in both and still going to be able to succeed with both.